Hi guys, Evan here. Today we're looking at Preptest 20 Game 2. This is a game that's very old but still highly relevant. It's just like any in-out game you might see on a modern test. So basic in-out grouping game, kind of a dry setup that maybe obscures a little the fact that it's an in-out game, but you should be able to quickly see that there's only two options. What we have is this university budget committee, and they're going to reduce some areas of expenditure that I've listed up here, G, L, M, N, P, R, S, W. And we're told exactly how many are getting reduced. 5 are getting reduced, so that's like the in-group side. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And 3 are out, are not getting reduced. So for the rules, it's a classic in-out game where we've got kind of a forest of conditional rules to wade through. We're first told G and S are reduced. If G and S are reduced, then W is reduced as well. And if you want to do the contrapositive of that, you do W, then not W, then not G, or not S. So if you want to kind of see what that looks like, if G and S are in, that's going to pull W in as well, right? Whereas if W is on the outside, then you need to have at least one of G or S on the outside as well. For our next rule, we have N is reduced. If N is reduced, then neither R or S are reduced. So you're going to write that neither nor gets written as an and, right? So that means, you have N in, that kicks R and S out, right? And the classic thing with in-out games that you have to remember is this is two separate rules, right? And what this is always going to mean is that when you take N and R or N and S, you're always going to have to see at least one of them out. So between N and R, you got to have one out, right? And then between N and S, you have to have one out. So we'll get to maybe seeing if we can't make our diagram in here a little more full by talking about those rules later. Now we've got another not both rule. If P is reduced, then L is not reduced, right? And that one's, let's just take account of that right away here. That means at least one of P and L is on the outside. And then with this one, it's a little trickier, right? What do I do? Do I do N, then R, or S, one of these two? You can do that. Here, we get another rule that says that of the areas L, M, and R, exactly 2 are reduced. 2 reduced. Just do something that's going to help you remember that. And then 1's not reduced. So this next spot is L, M, and R. So what I thought it would be best to do here is, since we're already thinking about L, M, R in the context of this spot, I think it's best to just write this one as N or S, right? And then make sure you're keeping track of this N then not R rule in your head. Don't lose sight of that. So now this side looks pretty, solid here. We already know a lot about what's going on. Over here, this rule can be written in this way, knowing that 2 of these spots has to be filled by either an L, an M, or an R. We're going to skip 6 because it's just a basic acceptability question. Nothing new there. You just take your rules one at a time, see where they're violated. You'll be left with one standing, right? Nothing hard there. This next one is also kind of an acceptability question, 7, but we're told that W's in. So we put W in, and then which of the remaining 4 from these lists is an acceptable group that we can add in too. Again, what I do is kind of take your rules one at a time and make sure that they're not violated. The GS and W rule, isn't really going to apply because anything goes there. That's just not applying here, right? W is not out, so the contrapositive of this rule doesn't apply. So we have to look at our other rules. But taking this next rule, N, then not R, then N, not S, we see that gets rid of B, that gets rid of D. Then we take our P and L rule, that gets rid of C. And then our LMR, 2 of each rule, LMR, we don't have 2 in there, so that's no good. we're left with E as the correct answer. Pretty easy solve. 8 tells us that P is reduced. Now, when you look at P being reduced, that means P is not over here, right? So you have L definitely in this spot taking up that LMR slot over here. That forces, remember you need 2 of each, that forces M and R over here. And this is an early question in the game, so making that one inference, 9 times out of 10, that's going to answer the question. So which of the following is a pair of areas of expenditure, both of which must be reduced? Scan down here, and you see M and R jump out at you right away, right? Nothing too fancy always on early questions. When you make an inference, obviously, you should always head straight in and see if you've answered the question. That's always good practice, but especially on early questions, never ever try and make any further inferences. Just jump straight in, see if you solved it. Number 9, we get SL placed in the inside. We know right away from this rule here, with the not both rule, that kicks N out, right? So S, N's over here. L's on this side. That means just one of M or R is down here for the remaining one of these that we need on the outside. Now, we're supposed to look for a pair that could also be reduced, right? And we also know that over here we need one of these M or R guys in. I forgot to mention that because we know L's on this side, we know P is filling up that remaining block. So things are looking a little set in stone, right? P's here. We know MR is filling up one of these spots, right? And then we've only got 2 more spots remaining. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. You can eliminate right away anything where you see P in, so that's good. You can eliminate anything that you see N in. We're left with GM as the answer. 10 tells us R is not reduced. So R is taking up this LMR spot. That puts L and M on the inside. What do we know? When L's over here, that means we have P over here. That's a lot of work, right? So I'm hoping that we've answered the question right there. But it turns out that it doesn't yet, right? I know that it's not C, P is reduced. I can cross that out. Let's do a little more work. This remaining one has to be NS, right? So from that, we can conclude that, well, W, there's no more room for W. W has to go over here. But unfortunately, it doesn't answer the question. What else can we conclude? Well, G has to be in too. Just like W, there's no room for G. So now, if you look at that, G is reduced. Yeah, that's our answer. A, G is reduced. So a lot of work there. This is a harder question towards the end of the game. So you had to kind of keep making inferences and checking if you'd answered the question yet. 11 is what I would consider an insanely hard question. We're told M and R are in, right? So it feels like we've got a lot of information off the bat. M and R are in. That puts L over here. And now, what do we do from there? The problem is when you put L in, it's like this rule doesn't apply anymore, right? Because L could be filling either of these spots, right? And now we just don't really have much information to do the rest of this problem. We know we've got N or S still in here, it feels like. And then the P and L, P could be on either side. There's a lot going on, right? So it's confusing as hell. So what do you do to start? Well, we know this rule doesn't really, factor in anymore. P could be on either side. What rules do we have left to look at? Well, what else do we have to look at? Well, I start with the rules that we have that are about things that are going on, right? This R in is a trigger for the contrapositive of this rule right here. So that means we know if R is in, then N has to be out. So that's now N, right? So we have NL. So having figured that out, I'm really hoping that I answered the question there. Okay, so we now have 2 dudes over here who we know cannot be reduced. And if you look through the answer choices, bam, you get that for C. So by staying calm and looking at which rules applied, it went okay. I actually kind of screwed up a little by not seeing very quickly that this rule got triggered here. finally, the last one, but it's a doozy. You know, like this is the kind of question I feel like possibly on the actual exam I might get wrong. So it's telling us which of the following areas must be reduced. But if you stay calm, you'll realize, okay, who don't we see over here at all? We don't see G and we don't see W on the outside. So is it possible to not reduce those? Well, let's give it a try, right? We only have these two left to try, so I think it's good to just stay calm and try those out. Let's see, can we get G in? And then if we want to get G in, we should do L because it satisfies two of these categories at the same time. And then we just have N or S here, M, R, you know, N or S. I guess if it's going to be, sorry, we can't have N here at all, right? We learned that in the last game. So, and then P, and then W. Okay, so that works out fine. So we can have G out. Now let's try W. W out, we've got to again do that same L thing. If we try to have, say, M here, well then there's no room for the PL and the NS, right? So the only one we can do is have L. That kicks M and R in. We know if R is in, that N is out. And then G and S come in. Sorry, G and S. But then what about this rule? All of a sudden, if these two are over here, that means W has to be over here as well. So there's no way to have W be on this outside. And that gives us our answer that W always has to be out. And that's E as the correct answer. Very, very tough problem if you hadn't sort of somehow figured that out ahead of time. And I know I hadn't, so I wouldn't really expect you to either. But just realizing that, okay, well, we know all these guys can be out, right? Is it possible for one of these two to be out? These are the only two we're looking at right here. So that's the strategy for hitting that question. Okay, so definitely a very difficult game as far as in-out games go. I hope you had an okay time with it. I think if you get this set up, locked down, you're going to have a relatively easy time, although things get tough there. You know, the one where you have L in, as in question 11, makes things really complicated because it's in two of these, so it doesn't give you a lot of information. So if you could handle that, congratulations, because this is first order difficulty stuff. There's probably nothing you're going to see on test day that's going to throw you for a loop if you did okay on this game, grouping wise. Okay, thanks a lot. Talk to you soon.